was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much the injuries matter, but man.
Well, the Marcus Peters thing too. It's just like it. Yeah, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show Showdown edition. First Monday night game of the season. And we're happy to be here with you. I'm Dave Lochran, joined as always by Matt Gajeski. Today's show sponsored by No House Advantage. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But my God, Matt, yesterday reminds me why I love and why I hate football as much as I do.
It was a crazy, crazy week. And we have one more game tonight, but just all the upsets. If you want to just talk strictly DFS, the chalk did pretty bad in a lot of spots. We had some injuries in spots that I know you and I both targeted heavily. I don't know if we want to bring up Raheem Mostert in our little recap, but man, that was a real sore spot for me. And there were just a lot of things that didn't go according to plan. But that's NFL.
You know, it pisses me off. Actually, it doesn't. I just think it's funny almost. Is you'll throw a tweet out there. I put a tweet out yesterday. It said, draft, and you know, I bet all the Raheem Mostert overs like a week ago before we even knew that Trey Sermon was inactive. We talked about this, right? Like Raheem Mostert, I was super overweight on him for DFS and for betting. And he had 20 yards on his first two carries. And of course, Elijah Mitchell goes off as well, which was just adding insult to injury. But I said something. I was like, DraftKings just moved Raheem Mostert's rushing prop from 68.5 to 100.5. It was already a smash spot, but now it's inevitable, saying they just moved his prop 32 yards. Okay. In one fell swoop. This wasn't like they took it off the board, moved it to 32. Right? Pretty obvious that if you got him at 68.5, you were really happy. I know our boy Ben Rosser, that you do a lot of college football work. His book it was a stale line. They never moved it. He got crushed on that because of course you're going to hammer that. Of course you're going to hammer 68.5, right? With Trey Sermon inactive.
Oh yeah, dude. I don't have access to props as readily as some people in legal states, but I thought that was like the smash of the day. I was watching your show right before I came on Sunday. You guys were all talking about how much you love Mostert, and then the news probably broke towards the end of your show. It's like, man, these guys are like printing their theoretical dollars ahead of time.
I know. And I mean, I had Raheem Mostert to score at -125, that moved to like -250, you know, over rushing prop, over total yard, everything. But then all the likes later on in the night start trickling in and through the day on this. I start seeing people liking the "now it's inevitable" tweet after he got hurt. And it's like, fuck you, man. If he was just terrible, fine. But, or if you're the type of person, and I can respect this, that responds right after I say it before the game starts and goes, he's going to get hurt. He always gets hurt. I mean, I still think that's silly, but I'd be like, okay, fine. But the whole after the fact filtering the tweets out, finding the wrong ones, hit me beforehand, and then we'll go back and forth, and then you can make fun of me all you want. But I mean, the injuries suck, man. And with Raheem Mostert, that was a nail in the coffin for me. I just metaphorically, and I almost wanted it to be physically.
Yeah, man. There's just a lot of tough outs in some of these games. Even the spots I was pretty sharp on, Arizona had a lot of Kyler to DeAndre Hopkins as pivots off like the really high owned stacks. Those mostly had like Derrick Henry run backs, and like Tannehill getting a rushing touchdown. Just that was hard to watch. And there's a lot of situations like that. And Michael Pittman completely failed. So if you're running Seattle stacks, like I don't know what you used on the Indianapolis side, but like a Zach Pascal touchdown doesn't help almost anybody. So it's just a tough day overall.
Yeah, it was tough for sure.
And
and Mark Ingram had 26 carries.
And dude, like the Chiefs game, like there was a lot of paths to some of those guys failing. Kelsey probably had like a middling outcome for him, but Patrick Mahomes just throwing a prayer ball up to Tyreek Hill, who ends up getting like a 75-yard touchdown on. You saw that play, didn't you?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my goodness. It was like, that play could have been as likely as it was to score a touchdown. I think there was like maybe a 50% chance that gets picked.
I know. Yeah. Look, this is football though. You'll hear us. This is just kind of how it goes sometimes, right? And that's what's so weird about it. In basketball, if you make a crazy shot, it only counts for 2 or 3 DraftKings 3.5 points. In football, if you have a Van Jefferson type play where the defense forgets they're playing football and doesn't even intend on touching you after you go down and you walk into the end zone, that counts for a lot. I mean, a lot of people's nights were done. Fortunately, I had a decent amount of Van Jefferson, but a lot of people's nights were done after that touchdown. And it was the first drive for the Detroit Lions. It's crazy.
Oh man. Yeah. My Chicago Bears, not a good showing, especially like down 20 points near the end of the game. Andy Dalton has like a 3rd and 15. He throws like a 3-yard out dropped. It's like, that's just par for the course for Chicago's decision-making.
Nick Chubb's good though, man. I got to say, I love that guy. And Cleveland actually had a decent game plan. You just can't keep them down for long. And that botched punt, my God, that botched punt was a dagger for them. Eagle didn't look too bad though. Jalen Hurts, Eagles defense. Jonathan Gannon might be the difference maker there because their defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, never knew how to make adjustments, but they held the Falcons scoreless for like 2.5 quarters. So at least I got that, Matt. At least I was happy to see that Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith looked good and Miles Sanders looked like a stud out there. And the defense looked okay, even though it's the Falcons.
Yeah, man, I kind of like the Eagles win total before the year. That was a weaker division. I think people were kind of overestimating how much Dak matters to that team. And obviously Dak, very, very important, but that team has no semblance of defense. So, and with especially the extended playoffs, having the extra wild card team, I think there's some decent expectations for the Eagles in a division that's kind of up for grabs.
One more thing, and then we're going to get into this game tonight, which is on all fronts a mess. You talk Raiders, completely retooled offensive line, bolstered the pass rush, the outside. Maybe that makes a difference. Marcus Peters gone for Baltimore. 3 running backs to the injured list or to the IR within 2 weeks, and just a mess overall. So we're gonna hit on all of that stuff. But I see people talking about it in chat, and I feel like we need to mention this. That Packers Saints game, which was in a neutral stadium in Jacksonville, it wasn't in New Orleans. That was shocking, Matt. I mean, not that Jameis Winston had a decent game or that Alvin Kamara is just very good, but what a shocking turn of events. I was really blown away by how bad Aaron Rodgers was. It's the biggest loss in terms of differential in his career.
So I live in Milwaukee. I'm surrounded by Packer fans. It's a team I followed closely my entire life. It's a team I've been following closely for years, especially since their new regime took over ownership. Not ownership. General managers, like the people that make the calls drafting and their head coach. I think you're finally starting to see the fruition of horrific decision-making the last 3 years. Even going back 2-3 years, you have very strong offensive line play with guys like Corey Linsley, Brian Bulaga. And this year, some of those guys are gone. They've lost them over the last couple in free agency. Bakhtiari's hurt, late season injury, still not recovered. You really have one good offensive lineman right now, Elgin Jenkins. They had to move him out of position to left tackle. They're starting rookies that were drafted oftentimes on day 3, players that aren't expected to play long-term, or if any, like these are spot starters that are playing meaningful snaps for your team. Rodgers just under duress for the whole game. And previously, when you had strong offensive line play, you could rely on undrafted free agent receivers like Allen Lazard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling to work open. But when they have to open up off the line of scrimmage, we're talking about players that are barely like NFL caliber talent because they've wasted so many draft picks on a backup quarterback, a 2nd-round running back that doesn't play, a tight end, like an H-back tight end in DeGuara. They've wasted so many picks that when the depth left their team, now they just don't have anything. Their 3rd-round slot receiver, Amari Rodgers, doesn't play. They traded for like a 30-year-old Randall Cobb, and he didn't play. This Packers team is just a disaster. They're probably still going to win the NFC North because it's the worst division in football. But my goodness, that was an eye-opener.
It was a big eye-opener. And Jameis Winston threw a touchdown on almost 40% of his completions. So there's that.
I mean, they tried to address corner, but Kevin King's still their number 2. He's not good.
I mean, Winston was like 14 of 20.
There were, like, you saw Juwan Johnson's touchdown where there was like that mix-up in the end zone. He was wide open. There were some things that really worked in Winston's favor, but like the Saints defense just ravaging the Packers O-line, the receivers not like Marshawn Lattimore was playing with a club. Like,
yeah, I know. And then he got paid big money after that.
The dude's out there. The dude doesn't have use of one of his hands. He's just bodying receivers. The Packers can't open up on that.
It's crazy. Anyway, we're happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you didn't do so yet. It helps us greatly if you enjoy all this free content and all the good stuff we're putting out here at Awesemo. And subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're about 2K away from 60,000. probably do a big giveaway or something, but more than anything, we can all, you included, feel a sense of accomplishment when we get there. But no, thanks for the support, guys, throughout all of the seasons, and especially to kick off this year. So if you haven't done so, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to know when all of our shows are going live, hit that notification bell as well. All right, Matt, it's time to get into this. And you mentioned it. This Baltimore team is a mess right now, but they are still, and I'm not really shocked by this, they are still laying 4 points on the road. They have a 27-point implied total, 50-point total in this game. I'll kick you off with a stat that I saw this morning that was shocking. So in the last 5 season openers, the Ravens are 5-0. Okay, that's cool, right? Nothing crazy. Their point differential is 177-26 in those games.
That's wild.
That's crazy. 177-26. Look, I'm not trying to foreshadow anything or use that as a predictive measure, but you can't look at that and say that's not one of the most insane differentials you'll see for a half a decade of season openers.
It's crazy. They're coached really well. Like, they're a team that's notorious for just dominating people in the preseason just because of like sharp coaching, everything like that. And I'm not surprised, but to see it that drastic is pretty shocking. And they play in a pretty good division. Like, some of those games, I'm sure, against teams like Pittsburgh's been a good team. Cleveland's up and down throughout the history of the time you mentioned, but Baltimore are playing pretty tough opponents too.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they beat Miami like 41-0 a couple of years ago. In Brian Flores' first year where, yeah, I don't know. Okay, cool. Alex just said he just posted an initial run of ownership. He's still tweaking it, but we'll get some updates throughout the show. If you guys want to follow along at awesemo.com with our ownership. You know, I will say this much, though. You mentioned that this team is a mess. I don't disagree, but how much of a mess is it really? Like, let's start with the backfield, right? Are we really that worried about the backfield in Baltimore in terms of an efficiency standpoint? Like, I just am of the belief that a good run blocking line plus a running quarterback. We saw it with Jalen Hurts yesterday, what it did for that. And obviously their offensive line is finally healthy, and Jordan Mailata might be the real deal. But Matt, like, how much does just Lamar Jackson's dual threat ability plus the run blocking plus the scheme make it so you could kind of throw any decent guy behind there and they're still going to produce?
That's kind of my approach to it. And we've seen it with running backs that don't have a strong pedigree. I mean, we know we spent the second rounder on J.K. Dobbins, but Gus Edwards is an undrafted free agent. He's been incredibly efficient with this team. So I think there's some hope that they can still have a pretty strong run game. Dobbins is a great player. Losing him sucks. And we've seen Gus Edwards be productive throughout his career. So I think maybe he wasn't drafted at all. I was going to say underdrafted, but just not scouted correctly coming out of college. But I still think there's some hope for the players in this backfield. A lot of veterans. Tyson Williams, a guy that had a really weird college career, didn't really get evaluated correctly either. And of course, Lamar Jackson, 1,000-yard rusher each of the last 2 seasons. You could definitely look to him as somebody that could keep the running game together.
Yeah, Gus Edwards being undrafted. The guy's been of players with 100+ attempts in every year. Since he was a rookie, he's been top 8 in yards per attempt in every one of those years. And I don't think it's shocking that last year J.K. Dobbins averaged 6 yards per attempt. Of course, I'm not saying he isn't good, but I do think a lot of the effectiveness and production is a product of the offense and a product of Lamar Jackson. So I guess we have to start with the run game here. You've got Tyson Williams, who I'm seeing that he is expected to draw the start. Now, this was from a couple of days ago, so we'll see if we get any updates. And then you have Latavius Murray, who has been signed. And then you have Le'Veon Bell. They also signed Devontae Freeman to the practice squad. And I found it hilarious that Adam Schefter's like, they have 3 previous 1,000-yard rushers. I mean, come on. Who I think we talked about this the other day. Who cares about that, man? It doesn't really matter. But
it's completely meaningless.
It's completely meaningless. It means nothing. We saw how bad Devontae Freeman was last year in New York when Wayne Gallman actually was good in New York. It's crazy. But besides the point, did you see how expensive Tyson Williams is?
Yeah. And like Latavius Murray right behind him.
Yeah. So when I say expensive, I'm not talking, Lamar Jackson price, but These guys aren't cheap at all, Matt. So if you're playing them, you're going to be paying enough for them that we really have to try to get this right.
Yeah, we do for sure.
So, okay, let's break it down then. Williams, Murray, Bell, Freeman. Did they even bring Freeman up from the practice squad?
They haven't made that decision yet, to my knowledge.
Okay. So they can do it today. And we could have an instance where like Freeman is active and Bell is inactive.
For sure. Like this backfield is really weird to look at. Sorry, I'm like looking up Miles Boykin if he's going to play because he was on injured reserve in the preseason. I don't think he is, but that's what I'm doing behind the scenes. Someone was asking me a question. You're going to have the top two, Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, and then Trenton Cannon's going to be out there because of his special teams ability. So I think you have either Le'Veon or Devontae Freeman inactive. I don't know which one it's going to be though.
All right, so let's break this down then. Are you willing? Let's assume, right? Okay, how about this? I want to make sure we cover this on all fronts. As it stands right now, do you think Murray and Williams will be the two guys that get the bulk of the work today? Because that's where I'm leaning.
Yes.
Okay, if that's the case, are you willing to play them together? Because we saw plenty of games last year where Edwards and Dobbins both had fine games, and Lamar Jackson had a fine game. I mean, you're talking about a team that, here, let me pull this up, that last season had a run play percentage of, God, I think it was definitely the highest in the league. 55%, Matt. That was 4% higher than the next closest team.
Yeah, it's enormous. And we've seen that over the last couple of years. A lot of it is because of Lamar Jackson, but it's a team that's using two runners a lot. And similar to like San Francisco 2 years ago, when they're using their running backs, you have upside for like 15 carries a piece in the right game scripts. And we've seen that plenty with Dobbins and Gus Edwards in the past. We've even seen it with injuries with a guy like Justice Hill, who's also hurt. But that could have definitely been something we see tonight as well.
I mean, I look at it. So, excuse me. Yeah, of course, a lot of that comes from Lamar Jackson. There's no doubt about that. But Mark Ingram is gone, and the guy had 26 carries yesterday in a blowout win by Houston over the Jacksonville Jaguars. But last year, he still had 72 carries. So if you take all of these guys, including Mark Ingram, including Dobbins and Edwards and Lamar Jackson, and even throw Justice Hill in there, who had 12 carries, they ran the ball 521 times between those players. So, you factor that out across 16 games, that's around 33 carries per week. And Lamar Jackson didn't play in one of those weeks. I guess what I'm saying is, can we just load up on the ground game, or should this be a spot where we look towards a Sammy Watkins, right? We know Rashad Bateman is out at least the first 3 weeks. Marquise Brown has been really just hit or miss. Mark Andrews is up there in price, but he'll probably be a predominant pass catching option once again in this offense. Like, how do you approach the Baltimore Ravens tonight against the Raiders?
I'd like to get one of the rushers, and in tournaments, I think you're just going to spread ownership around to a lot of these players because there's so much uncertainty and you want to play them all. Even like Jeff Zrebeck, who is a fantastic beat reporter for Baltimore, he was talking about Trenton Cannon playing like a Justice Hill pass catching role, and they don't throw to the running back position a lot. So how much is this really worth? I think you need an outlier game from him for him to enter optimal lineups, but that's still somebody you want to consider. And it seems like they're going to be using at least those two backs in Latavius Murray and Tyson Williams. And because the implied team total is so high, they're the favorite in this game. Vegas hasn't shown a strong defense recently. I think they're players you want to get to with the high run rate.
Who would you say your favorite options are right now in the run game? And how are you attacking it in terms of, if you're playing lineups, are you captaining any of these guys? Are you rostering several of them together? And I think I kind of already asked you this, but just to go a little bit more in depth, would you play two of them with Lamar Jackson together? And like, how willing are you to do that and really just lean heavily on the run game?
Yes, I have no idea how the backfield's going to shake out. Nobody does. My favorite's Tyson Williams just because of this untapped upside. Everybody else on this roster has been cut recently. With Latavius Murray, there was kind of just some different circumstances. It wasn't due to talent. It was due to pay. Whereas like Le'Veon Bell and Freeman, if they're active, they're both like barely NFL players at this point. They're like practice squad players. Neither of them have produced in a long time. But Tyson Williams, we haven't seen him really outside of the preseason. It's a guy that tore his ACL his final season of college, and then he just tested like an absolute freak. But he's a guy that really battled injuries. I'll take like the untapped upside with Tyson Williams versus like Latavius Murray, who's been kind of a grinder back, an efficient back, but he's still 30 years old at this point.
What's Tyson Williams' pass catching upside look like?
He's a solid pass catcher, but I think it's similar to Dobbins. They just don't throw to the running back a lot. So it's not that he can't do it. I just like, will they change that this year? It doesn't seem like, I don't think there's anything to point to that, but he can definitely do it. Like kind of like Latavius Murray can. Like Latavius Murray's always been able to catch passes. He's just not better than Kamara at it. So he doesn't do it a lot.
Right, exactly. And only the Titans attempted more passes, or targeted, I should say, their running backs less than Baltimore last year. So like you said, it just doesn't happen, even though they can do it. But you do know, I feel like Greg Roman in 8 seasons as an offensive coordinator on 3 different teams has been top 3 or bottom 3 in pass play percentage all but once. And the year he wasn't, he was like 27th or something, right? So he doesn't like to throw the football often. They want to lean on the run. Do you think, though, that after last year, right, another unceremonious exit from the playoffs, do you think they know that they have to go into this season and do something different? Because in my opinion, you draft Rashad Bateman number in the first round, Tylan Wallace, you grab him in the 4th, and then you bring on Sammy Watkins. It does feel like they know they're going to need to upgrade and really provide a little bit more balance between the run and the pass. Will they have to do that against the Raiders today, who struggled against the run last year? I'm not necessarily saying that, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's a bit more balance here, given how much they've struggled against good teams in the postseason.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like you said, I don't think it matters against the Raiders, but I think they're almost taking like an approach that Buffalo did with Josh Allen, where early in his career really struggled with efficiency, but then they surrounded him with just premier pass catchers, mainly Stephon Diggs. The Ravens obviously didn't like trade for somebody, but they've now spent 2 first-round picks on receivers in Marquise Brown and Rashad Bateman. Bateman's not going to play in this game because of injured reserve. They go out and get Sammy Watkins. We know what he is at this point in his career. I think you could consider him a solid role player, but they're trying to invest in pass catchers in more competitive games down the road. And hopefully Bateman will have health behind him as well. That will help the overall Ravens offense. But like you said, I don't think it matters a ton tonight. If you're rostering a lot of Ravens pass catchers, I think you're hoping for efficient, deep passes, long touchdowns, things like that.
Okay, so 2 things here to close out the Ravens. It's a mess of a situation right now, especially when you have a premier running quarterback that just muddies the waters even further. With Lamar Jackson, are you willing to do like Jackson captain and then just running backs with no wide receivers? Do you want at least a Sammy Watkins in there, or a Marquise Brown, or a Mark Andrews? And also, are you willing to throw out a relatively heavy Baltimore passing stack tonight?
In tournaments for sure. In cash, definitely not. I want Lamar as my captain in cash, and then I will look to one of the runners, probably Latavius Murray for the sake of price. And like in the utility spot, the flex spot, depending on where you're looking, he's not really that expensive. And, neither is Tyson for that matter. But then from there, just looking at cheap pass catchers, like Sammy Watkins, also not very expensive. And like, they're going to use a lot of 2 tight ends in Baltimore. So I just think there's things you can do with the pass game. But in tournaments, if you want to go full stack and fade the runners, you're basically banking on Lamar getting the rushing touchdowns, the running backs not getting maybe as much work as we expect, and then Lamar also having some pass work. So Lamar's a really fun player for these kind of situations in GPPs, because there's a lot of ways he can get there individually and they affect all the other players.
An interesting thing too about Lamar Jackson, that if you look at Baltimore just from last year, we don't need to go through every season, and things are clearly different now that they've lost 3 running backs that were fixtures on the roster. And I wouldn't say Justice Hill, but he's been there, right? Last year, you saw a lot of red zone, you saw a lot of goal line attempts. I'm looking this up on the go. You saw a lot of goal line attempts for J.K. Dobbins. He saw 9 of them. Gus Edwards saw 10 of them, talking inside the 5-yard line. Lamar Jackson saw 3. A lot of his ability to score has always been from just taking off. So oftentimes from outside, like Matt, only 4 of his touchdowns last year came inside the red zone. So I do still think that you can see them coexisting. And granted, yes, if Lamar Jackson scores from the 30, it still takes away from the running backs. But I do think once they get down in there, these guys will still have their chances. But all in all, it's a weird spot. So let's recap Baltimore in this way. You've got Sammy Watkins, you've got Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, Tyson Williams, who is 12,000 on FanDuel. Latavius Murray's 8,000. So that's really interesting over there. And then, of course, you have Latavius Murray, and then whatever third backup is going to be on the roster who probably doesn't get much opportunity at all. What is your optimal approach right now for the Ravens? Easiest way to ask.
You play Lamar and captain for low risk contest, contest. Lamar's the best quarterback like we have maybe in the NFL. He's former MVP. His rushing upside for fantasy purposes in DFS is just unrivaled. And you get that in the captain slot and what I think is probably an affordable price. He is the most expensive player on the entire slate for good reason. From there, I think optimally you want to play one of the runners, Tyson or Latavius, and then look at a cheap pass catcher. We didn't dig into the pass catchers a ton, but we know Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews are going to be the 1-2. And they're basically 1A, 1B. I don't know which one's going to be ahead of the other, but those are the 2 target leaders. Watkins should play a lot in 2 receiver sets. The Ravens use a lot of 12 personnel. So when they have a third receiver on the field, it should be Devin Duvernay, but his snaps will be limited compared to the 2 top pass catchers.
If I were to ask you, what do you think Lamar Jackson's rushing plus passing prop is?
325 yards.
So I thought it'd be around that too. And this is why I'm asking you. It's at 286.5.
That's shockingly low.
That's what I thought. It seems very low, right? I mean, 286, you basically need him to throw for, well, actually, this is also because his passing prop is 209.5. And did they take it off? I'm pretty certain last I looked, his rushing prop is, I think, 71.5. So I don't know, man. That kind of feels nice. 286. Basically, are you saying, do you think Lamar Jackson can give you 290 total yards in this game?
Yeah, as long as the runners don't do it. Like, can you name one good player on the Ravens or the Raiders defense?
No, that's the thing. I know they brought in Yannick Ngakoue. Yeah.
What's up? I mean,
I said Yannick Ngakoue. So do you expect the pass rush to be better this year? But even if it is, that just means that Lamar Jackson escapes trouble, zips up the middle for 30 yards.
Their pass rush is their strength. And it's funny because they're doing it with like late round draft picks. Like Max Crosby is probably their best pass rusher, him or Carl Nassib. And they've spent like premium draft capital on like Clelin Ferrell, who's like a third stringer now. Like they bring in Yannick Ngakoue, who has barely played of late. He's older now. I don't know what he has left in the tank, potentially good. Like Gerald McCoy is supposed to be a mainstay for them. He's coming off a major injury. Linebacker and like defensive back are huge weaknesses for this team. So I don't know.
It's just a bet that I think looks kind of nice. Lamar, 71.5 yard rush or 71.5 rushing yard prop. So we'll see.
I like that prop too.
I like them both. Yeah. I don't know. Unless you think that they're going to be just markedly improved defensively. Speaking of the Raiders, you probably like the over there for Lamar Jackson.
They're worse on defense. They didn't get better.
Right. And that's what I mean. Another thing too, and I know he had not a lot of passing yards at all last year. He struggled, but if they do throttle the Raiders, it's Lamar Jackson's going to have a hand in all of it. Unless, like you said, unless Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray are just beast mode style, but that's the only out for someone betting the under on Lamar Jackson total yards.
Yeah. 100% agree. That's why I think he's the best captain.
Say it again.
That's why I think he's the best captain. And that's reflected at like the early run of projections. He's one of the best values still, even though he's super expensive. Ownership, like he's going to be massively owned, but he deserves to be.
You know, you and I talked about it last year where it was kind of just if Lamar Jackson, and he was on a lot of showdown slates that you and I did, we'd so often just say captain him and figure it out from there. Because when you have the 100-yard rushing upside and also are the one throwing the football, it's very difficult to overcome an amazing Lamar game. And it also can hurt everybody else on the team when he's scrambling for 20 yards a shot. So anyway, check out No House Advantage, our sponsor. I told you I'd talk about them. People love playing there. We get awesome reviews on it. That's why I know. And you got basketball, you got baseball, you got PGA and all that stuff. But really what we're talking about now is NFL. That's what everyone's looking for. It is, if you haven't played there yet, they bring an entirely different way to enjoy DFS. You have player prop contests across all of these sports, and it's 100% peer-to-peer. So it levels the playing field, makes it way easy for you to win compared to traditional sites. And if this is the biggest thing for me, a lot of these other prop-based sites change the props throughout the day. No House Advantage, once a prop is set, it stays. They go stale. They are static. But not everyone sees that. A lot of people be like, well, yeah, but everyone has that same advantage. Yeah, but not everyone knows that. And that is how you take advantage to get an edge. The few edges that are left in the DFS or betting space, that is absolutely one of them. There's no doubt about it. And you can get in on so much of that, especially when you take things earlier. Or really, no, I'm sorry, wait for as soon as you can until you get an opportunity, because they're not going to change. And if you're brand new to No House Advantage, you get a $25 deposit bonus when you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. You got mass entry capabilities, big prize pools, just like any other site you've been playing. You can beat your friends, not the house. Download the app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. But remember, take advantage of those edges. There are very few of them left. No House Advantage, definitely a spot to do that. Hell, even if you want to take some of those funds after you win, go to FanDuel, DraftKings, try for the 100K, the $1 million prize pools. Sure, but you got to build your bankroll somewhere. And the best way to do it outside of cash games is over at a place like No House Advantage. No doubt about it. Get your $25. Use the promo code Awesemo, and we'll see you over there. All right, Matt, you want to talk some Raiders here?
Let's do it.
I want to start actually with Josh Jacobs. We're getting questions about him in chat, and rightfully so. He has a rushing yard prop today of under 50, 49.5. Kenyon Drake came in, signed a deal that a lot of people scoffed at and kind of ripped the Raiders for, but they're used to getting ripped. When it comes to Jacobs today, but and it's funny because they brought on a guy in Kenyon Drake who was so similar in terms of efficiency. Outside of the double-digit touchdowns last year, both of them were pretty inefficient, right? Averaging 4 and 3.9 yards per attempt, respectively. What do you do with Jacobs today against Baltimore? And do you think this game stays close?
He's going to be a very contrarian option. For that reason, we love him in tournaments. If the Raiders get up for whatever reason, they're going to ride him. So there's upside there. But he is Derrick Henry-esque in the fact that he just doesn't catch passes. So that's what Kenyon Drake was brought in specifically to do. He's been spelled by lesser men than Drake, including like Jalen Richard and Theo Riddick at points in his career. So if the game script plays out according to bookmakers and the way Vegas is projecting, and like even his prop is, I think it's ridiculous. Like that's super low for Jacobs, but it shows you kind of how people in the market thinks about him right now and what we've seen Gruden use his former first round pick to do, which is just slam into the back of his offensive line on the first 2 downs before undrafted free agents go out there on third. Sorry, sometimes I'm a little mean to John Gruden.
The funny thing is with Gruden though, is he doesn't run a bad offense, Matt, in the sense that they were actually pretty productive last year. It's just their defense was atrocious. Not a big points per game guy, but the Raiders averaged over 27 points per game and allowed almost 30 points per game, right? Like that was a huge Achilles heel for them. But like Derek Carr was actually not that bad. He surprised me. Darren Waller's a stud, and they managed to score a lot of points. They routed the Kansas City Chiefs one week. So I don't necessarily think they have a bad passing game or even an inefficient offense, but that run game was super, super inefficient.
Yeah, it was. I actually don't think Gruden's a terrible play caller either.
Yeah.
I think he's actually deploying Josh Jacobs efficiently. Like he's a 2-down back. The problem is like Josh Jacobs shouldn't have been drafted in the first round. Like you drafted a 2-down grinder with what he got drafted like 24th overall. That's the issue. But in like tournaments, if you're trying to flip game script around it and think of a contrarian build, Jacobs should come in with minuscule ownership at captain. And he's a good player in his role. It's just more times than not, the way bookmakers are projecting this, he's probably not your optimal captain.
I don't think he is either, but it is interesting to me that you have to at least think that Gruden's not just, I feel like people are under the assumption that people are just giving, or that Gruden's just giving up on Jacobs. Like you said, drafted the guy in the first round. I still think they very much intend on using this guy. And, Devontae Booker's gone. If Kenyon Drake is used predominantly as a pass catching back, similarly to how he was used a few years ago in Miami before coming to Arizona, you're still going to get some big games, probably some 2 touchdown games from Josh Jacobs. But the ceiling is definitely capped there because he's the furthest thing from game script proof. And that's what bothers me.
100%. It's like Derrick Henry light.
Yeah, exactly. And with the Titans, they could be down 20 and still run the shit out of Derrick Henry, which is unlike any other team. Obviously, I'm joking, although they did it against Green Bay last year. More so, abandoning the run is scary. What about Kenyon Drake? Do you think there is anything there? Because that price point to me is shockingly high.
100%. I am very surprised at how high it is.
He should be 4,000, maybe 4,800. Right.
Yeah, 100%. But with Drake, he's more expensive, and DraftKings specifically, he's more expensive than either Baltimore back.
That's crazy.
He's locked into a third down role. He's not playing over Jacobs on early downs. The only thing to watch is Jacobs is questionable for the game. They list him as questionable every single game. So I think he's going to play, but I mean, maybe he doesn't.
You have to respect the hustle, though, that even before week 1, Josh Jacobs is still questionable. Right.
Jacobs, I would put this at a 95% chance Jacob plays. They list him as questionable every week. So
no, that's what I mean. But I'm saying it's incredible, the dedication here, that even before week 1, they couldn't even wait till after week 1 where he played to make him questionable for week 2. It's nah, buddy, you're questionable and you're going to play. But his ownership, we've got him at 36% right now, 6% in the captain spot. Where Kenyon Drake, and I know Alex said we will be updating this. It's just the initial run. But if Kenyon Drake is any more than 1% in the captain spot, I would say that's too much.
Agreed. Unless,
and it's not
for whatever reason, Jacobs doesn't play. And again, we expect him to.
The only question I have, though, Matt, the only maybe caveat here, and I try and, I talk about this all the time. We try and hit every angle when we're doing these showdown shows because you have to. The only caveat is, do they fall behind, and does Kenyon Drake get a lot of passing down work late in the game? But even so, would it be enough to justify that salary?
Probably not, because again, he's more expensive than the Baltimore backs, but there's a path to it. And you mentioned it. If they're down in games, they don't use Josh Jacobs as the third down back. So there is a chance. It's just with these backs, we talked about it with Giovanni Bernard in the last Showdown show. For him to reach his ceiling, Tampa Bay needs to get down in that game. They need to be running hurry up and some stuff. What are the chances that happens today against Baltimore? I think they're pretty low, but that doesn't mean the chance doesn't exist.
Right. I tweeted during that Thursday night football game, during the season premiere, that I was we might be seeing Gio Bernard pretty soon, because Ronald Jones fumbled, and on the ensuing drive, Leonard Fournette dropped the pass that resulted in an interception. And Arians did put him in. Gio Bernard came in for a couple of snaps and then came back out because they're this isn't going to help. But yeah, weird things like that happen where Josh Jacobs, Matt, fumbles on the first drive and then, gets stuffed 3 times and then fumbles again. It's super rare, but that's the situation where Kenyon Drake can win you a tournament. You need all of the stars to align, and you need the game script to play out as planned.
Yeah, you highlighted it. Good tournament play.
Right. Exactly. That's pretty much it. Okay. Passing game. We'll start with Derek Carr. How do you feel about having some captain spot Derek Carr, and then obviously just loading up with guys like Darren, assuming this would be an approach where you just assume that the run game is going to struggle. And I don't think that's necessarily an unfair assessment. Assuming that's the case, you've got guys like Darren Waller. You no longer have Nelson Aguilar, but you have some very low floor, high ceiling guys in Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs, complete unknown quantities from what we've seen in only 1 year from them.
Yeah, I think Carr's a good captain play. Based on our ownership projections right now, and again, they'll update. I do think the quarterback ownership is probably not going to change much. Lamar is going to be more than double owned in strictly the captain spot than Derek Carr. You'll have a lot of people rostering Carr as a utility, but you can get some leverage by playing him in the captain spot. And there's definitely paths to Lamar failing. There's paths to a Derek Carr ceiling game. Lamar failing, maybe it's just the runners get all the touchdowns and they're a low volume passing attack anyway. For Derek Carr to succeed, I think the Ravens are leading in the game. Carr is throwing the ball a lot, and we have seen ceiling performances. You and I both like him kind of as an efficient quarterback that's kind of underrated. Yeah. So there's paths there, and I like the leverage you're gaining.
What about captaining Darren Waller? He's expensive and for very good reason. People look at him as a tight end, but this guy's a freak. You know, I'm not saying he's Travis Kelce, but in PPR formats, Matt, he was number 7 in the league, not among tight ends, he was 7th among all pass catchers, 10th among all skill players in the league last year in PPR scoring. He had 107 receptions. He had a phenomenal catch rate, 2,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. And the biggest thing that stands out to me, you probably already know this, 2 years ago, the biggest knock on Waller was the guy's not scoring touchdowns. I think he only had 3 and only had, slightly, I think he had 11 red zone targets on the year. Last year, the only player with more red zone targets than Waller, who had 23, was Devontae Adams. So they started using him a ton in the red zone. He is the clear number 1, no matter how good Henry Ruggs or Brian Edwards happen to turn out, how good or bad. And he can line them up anywhere. And the other thing is he ran, I think it was 90% of routes per drop back, which is just an absurd number. So he checks all of the boxes, does he not?
Oh, he does. And I like what you said about him basically being a wide receiver 1. He's like pretty close to Kelce, if not on the same level. You can definitely captain Waller. The target distribution for this team is really narrow. I do think they'll be improved at receiver, but I don't know if it's a huge jump. Losing Aguilar, he was their number 1. So you do need somebody to step up there. I don't really think there's a strong candidate for somebody to jump Waller as the number 1. So he should be locked into like a 28+% target share. Maybe on the other side, Marquise Brown hits that target number, but with the Raiders being so much more pass centric than Baltimore, there's a very clear path to Waller being the optimal captain. You do need some things to work right, like Lamar needs to fail, but it could certainly happen.
Does Lamar need to fail, or does Lamar just not need? Because a 10 reception, 120 yard game, 2 touchdowns from Waller isn't out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, you're clearly talking ceiling game here, right? But I think you have that upside with Waller, just because when I say he checks all the boxes, targets, high reception, high catch rate, which is important. He can rack up yards as well, and he's a red zone threat. So all of those, when the stars do align, he can pop off. So I think Jackson can have a good game, but you're right. You can't have a Jackson game where he throws for 250, runs for 100, rushes for a touchdown, and throws for 3. Then you're just done if you have Waller at captain.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The only difference with Jackson, though, is like a middling game for him sometimes comes on the ground, which scores better than just regular passing stuff. So we talked about this on Thursday, like a non-Tom Brady path to like an optimal lineup would include a middling game from Brady, where one of his pass catchers probably outscores him from like PPR value. But like a middling Lamar Jackson game, a lot of that comes on the ground. I still do think there's a strong chance in like a middling Lamar Jackson situation that Waller could outscore him. But it's just like Lamar's just a tougher valuation than a Brady, because you don't know where his points necessarily are going to come from.
How worried are you about this retooled offensive line that's, only returning 1 starter?
Dude, Incognito's out today too.
I know.
Man, it's going to be a disaster.
Are you convinced that they won't be able to hold up in pass protection? Because this kind of contributes to everything we're talking about, and run protection. Like what should we be expecting today? Because if that's the case, Matt, and Baltimore gets them, not only should we be considering Baltimore's defense, not in the captain spot, but in some spots, but also kind of downgrading everything for the Raiders.
Yeah, I do think their pass protection is going to be an issue. I think it will be an issue today. But like Baltimore got a lot worse on defense this year. They're worse at pass rusher for sure. They lost Judon. He's a big loss. So your top 2 edge rushers are like, they do have Justin Houston. They spent a first rounder on Jason Oweh out of Penn State, but like Houston's battled a lot of injuries recently. Oweh being a rookie doesn't help. You do need a lot of people to step up. I still do think it's a mismatch. So I would be looking to Baltimore's defense in lower risk contests like cash builds. They're in play. I haven't quite landed on a cash build yet, so I don't know if they're going to be in there. but overall, good tournament option as well. Maybe captain them in some immense like entry field tournaments, the Millie Maker type stuff. But otherwise, I think they're a pretty middling play, but the defense you want to target.
All right. And I've been waiting to hear your opinion on this. What do we do with the outside receivers? Like Brian Edwards, Henry Ruggs, how do we approach them? If you want to hit on Renfro, that's fine too. But namely Brian Edwards, who had a really great camp and was drawing comparisons from Derek Carr to his days playing in Fresno State with Devontae Adams and getting Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice. I'm not even kidding. There were some absurd comps, but the kid could be good. And Henry Ruggs was the highest drafted wide receiver last year. He's the first receiver off the board. I personally think that speaks more to the Raiders' inability to draft skill players and targeting only fast players. Look, I'm an Eagles fan. We can't draft receivers for shit. Hopefully Devonta Smith is good. He's going to be. But Matt, what are we doing with Edwards and Ruggs? Devonta Smith is going to be good. I mean, I'm pretty confident.
Oh, he looked great in week 1, man. Happy
thoughts on Edwards and Ruggs, though?
Yeah, I think Ruggs is the guy they're going to try to feed. They spent a first round pick on him. There's a little bit of like, how to put this, maybe like a buyer's remorse with Henry Ruggs after a really bad year 1. And it's sort of like what the Bears did with Trubisky. Maybe you miss on a prospect, but instead of admit your mistake, and we don't know that it's a mistake yet, they're going to go out there and they're going to try to feed him. It could go one of two ways. He fails. They continue to do so. Or maybe he is the player they thought year 1 and he was just battling injuries. We don't know, but he should be the guy receiving a lot of volume. It's kind of the same situation with Edwards, except Edwards battled a lot more injuries last year. You have 2 completely unproven 1-2 receivers in your offense. It actually makes me kind of want to go down and play Hunter Renfrow, who's the only known commodity for this team right now. A pass catcher outside of Waller, we're talking strictly receivers right now. And Renfrow is significantly cheaper. And Renfrow has quietly been efficient throughout his career. I did not think he was going to be a good prospect coming out of Clemson, but he has shown me wrong. And he's been a little more dynamic than I think his slot only role has suggested.
Are you willing to captain any receivers? I'm not talking pass catcher because we know Darren Waller makes sense, but are you willing to captain any receivers in large field tournaments? And of course, it's a nuanced question because if you play a ton of lineups, it's just going to happen once in a while. But just overall sentiment on captaining receivers from both teams.
I like them in tournaments. We talked about this with Tampa Bay last time, and more so on the Raiders side. If one of them has a big game, just the way even FanDuel with a half PPR scoring, but DraftKings specifically, if a lot of production's funneled through one player, there's a pretty good chance they outscore Carr based on volume and, touchdowns being worth 2 more points receiving than throwing. So I do like receiver captains. They're a little more volatile, but I think that does suit you in tournaments.
Man, we got almost 5 people watching here with us on a Monday. I love these people.
I like it too. Thank you guys for all being here. Sorry about a little bit of Raiders slander. I do not like the way the team is built. Like, for what it's worth, I do think Carr is an above average quarterback. I think they'll be able to score some points here. But I think the main advantages in the game come with Baltimore up front against a really bad Raiders offensive line. And then on the other side, Baltimore, I don't know how they just don't rack up 30 points on this Raiders defense.
I don't either. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm with you. And that's actually why we're going to get to our bets. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to build a lineup right now as well. 5 left. With the likes are just cruising now. 3 away from 100. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. It wouldn't be the same without having everybody in here. A lot of our regulars in chat, Matt, some of them wild people, but it still makes it enjoyable.
Dude, chat is awesome. I love you guys out there. A lot of funny comments too. You guys always make me laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. Some irreverence in there and some absolutely nonsensical takes from people that we love even more for it. Like our boy Drop Roses. I mean, that guy says something insane every single show. And all I want is for him to come back and say something else equally insane. All right. Matt, let's hit on, we're going to build a lineup and we'll do large field. We'll do large field. Let's do a large field single entry build. Okay. Which means that it's not the Millie prize pool, 250,000 up top, nothing insane like that. But, maybe a single entry, 10K, 20K up top. There's a lot of really good ones that you can find. And I think they're good contests to exploit. And if you guys are watching and maybe you're new to the channel, maybe you're new to Awesemo, maybe you've watched the channel, but you haven't checked out what we have at the site. all of our Showdown content is always included in our Express Pass, right? The weekly Express Pass, which is usually like $5 a week. But like ownership for Showdown, rankings for Showdown, projections for Showdown, all of that's included. This year, we're even doing ownership and tiers, ownership and projections for tiers and rankings for tiers contests. All of our in-season, season-long stuff from our Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, which I would love for you to check out and subscribe. If you're a season-long player, I'll be making a waiver wire video today. We do live shows. We do start, sit 'em. All of that stuff is included. Rest of season rankings, start, sit tool, waiver wire tool, and a whole lot more. Not to mention the lineup builder for DFS for the main slate is in this. If you use the promo code DAC, this is the last day you can do it, like the quarterback that lost on Thursday night and threw 58 times, DAK. If you use that, you will get it for a single dollar. So essentially free. $1, use the promo code DAC. All of that and more is included. Jordan probably put it up on the screen. Yes, he did. Nice job, Jordan. If you haven't checked it out yet, if you're new to Awesemo and you want to check it out, go to awesemo.com/promos, use the promo code DAC. For $1, you get all of that. What better time to do it than for tonight? Because you'll get ownership and projections and everything we have for Showdown for Monday and for Thursday night and for Sunday night and a whole lot more. So we'll see you over there, awesemo.com/promos. Use the promo code DAC. Get it for $1. All right, let's do it. Matt, we've got to build a lineup and we've got to make it quick. Let's start single entry, semi-large field. We'll say 15K up top, $100,000 prize pool. Who are you taking a captain?
I think this is a hard spot for me to decide on Lamar or not. But I think that tournament is large enough where you could consider getting away from him just because he's going to be like 30% in the captain spot alone. So you can gain some leverage, even pivoting to a guy like Waller and then try to find maybe one other piece of differentiation. Still have a really strong lineup. So we want to try building something with like a Waller captain.
I would thoroughly enjoy that. Let's do it. Let's go Waller at captain. And with that in mind, I do feel comfortable going with a Derek Carr here because we didn't even talk much about Marcus Peters being out. And I know we're short on time, but Marcus Peters, that's a pretty big loss as well. It's not and I'm not saying necessarily with Waller specifically, but if we were to go Waller captain, Derek Carr, and then maybe like an outside guy for the Raiders. What do you want to do though? Are we going to go Lamar here too? We have to, right?
I think we have to play Lamar.
Can it work?
That I think is a major question because if you have Waller, Carr, Lamar, you're averaging like 3.8K left for the rest of your guys. But I think there's enough value where it can.
Can we captain Waller without Derek Carr?
Probably not.
Right.
But
so
yeah.
All right. I'll throw something in. I'll try and open. I'm going to go Sammy Watkins here. I don't think that's insane. Also a great week one guy, Sammy Watkins, always crushes in week one. Ride the narrative, baby. Just total anecdotal nonsense. But I do think given that they brought him in for a reason and Rashad Bateman's out, Sammy Watkins could be that possession guy. Call me crazy, Matt, but he could be that possession guy that they've desperately needed. And they've only had a guy like Mark Andrews for that.
I agree with you. Do we have Watkins and Lamar in the lineup now?
We have Watkins and Lamar. Yeah.
Okay, so now we have 3,200 left. We're going to have to make some serious concessions, but I think that's okay because there are players I think that will receive time as rotational guys that we could get to and feel pretty good about. Two I want to mention. So Devin Duvernay will be the starter in 3 wide receiver sets for Baltimore. They don't use a ton of that player personnel package, but maybe they do with the injury to Nick Boyle, who is a fantastic blocker for them. He's on IR. I think Eric Tomlinson does play more of that blocking role, but you have Devin Duvernay potentially on the field more. And then you have a guy really cheap in like a Tylan Wallace, who they drafted late and probably sees rotational snaps at best. But you're going to have to do something weird to make a build like this work. You want to try Duvernay?
Let's do it. I mean, hey, listen, we've seen Duvernay do it in the past in these games. And not to mention, we saw Van Jefferson yesterday at $800 salary or whatever he was. It's possible, you know?
Yeah, I think so too.
That could have been Deshaun Jackson, who's a rotational guy in that wide receivers too. So we got 38 remaining. We're pretty much looking at a kicker, or we go with Hunter Renfrow here, and we go like passing stack, which this would be.
I love Renfrow.
All right, let's do it. Well, and listen, by the way, this isn't, we're just making this on the fly. It's fun to see what works and what doesn't. That's what we're looking to do here. What can we do? See what we're working with in terms of salary. Waller, Carr, Lamar, Watkins, Duvernay, Renfro. It's not out of the realm of possibility at all that could be a decent lineup, but no running backs there. And we did get a super chat from Rosso. Thank you, man. He says, who would y'all consider to be a good fade? Matt, we're up against it, so we'll go quick. Or someone I should stay away under the field to. If Kenyon Drake is legitimately getting the ownership we haven't projected for, that's the easiest answer. Yeah,
I pulled up ownership quick here. There's some, like Josh Jacobs is pretty high too. There's a clear path to him failing, and it's the path that bookmakers suggest is more likely. Again, Jacobs has a ceiling as well. He could certainly burn you, but I think he's a pretty solid fade. Like our sixth most owned player is Marquise Brown. That's a low volume passing attack with now it's been bolstered, I'll say. So you still have Andrews there. You have Sammy Watkins there and a lot of capital invested in pass catcher. There's paths to the individual Ravens pass catchers failing.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Damn, 540 people. I don't want to go, but we have to. MLB strategy shows coming up right after this. As always, thanks to our boy Jordan Klein. And if you didn't hit that thumbs up or subscribe, much appreciated, much obliged if you do. As Omar would say, that news was horrible, man. That hit me in the heart. Are you a Wire guy?
It's my favorite show.
Oh, dude, that really hurt. And Chalky White from Boardwalk Empire. Never talked about that, but really sad stuff. Rest in peace, pal. Favorite bet, Matt. Let's do this. Top bet of the night, top prop of the night. What do we got?
Ravens -4. I actually really like the prop you said earlier with Lamar.
Yeah, the Lamar over. We both like over 286.5 total yards. So rushing plus passing. Matt, I think I'm taking the over in this game, though.
I could see it. I think they're, especially with some of the injuries on Baltimore's defense.
Exactly.
There's some real paths to the Raiders putting up a good game, too.
I think so. I wouldn't be shocked to see a 27-24 game. We go over. And, that's the way it is. Or even just a blow the doors off by Baltimore and make it a 41-10 game. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think Baltimore wins, but I could see it staying relatively competitive. That'll do it for us. Be sure to follow your boy, Matt Gajeski, at Matt_Gajeski. Follow me at Laffy_D. And as always, throw a shout out to our boy Jordan Klein in the chat before you go. The man behind the controls, always putting in the work, getting up at 5 a.m. on the West Coast to do this for us every single day. We'll catch you guys back here soon. Thanks as always for watching. Peace.